It's the Dev Friday Show with Mark and Tim.
At least that's what we think it is. I mean, we're hopeful that today is the Dev Friday Show. We don't know. We had some technical issues last week, and Mark, it looks like you're broadcasting from a new place. Are you okay? Or is this feel like a remote correspondent somewhere in a blue screen room? What's going on here?
Well, you know how the summer was the summer of Mark.
Summer of Mark. Yeah.
But now this is the season to simplify, Tim.
Season to simplify. Okay.
Trying to cut back on everything. That includes my office arrangement and anything behind me. So now you just see is a nice wall.
So did you actually move offices, or
no? I'm just still down in the basement.
Okay.
I do not have the display cases behind me anymore. You probably noticed that.
Right.
And so I've actually minimized those and been selling those off. And
I mean, you should be. My understanding was those were very hard to come by at IKEA, because IKEA would say that they had them and then not have them. So
that's true. I
I'm
still have them.
Make a pretty penny off of selling them.
They're just packed up. What I'm focusing now is the items that were inside of the
the things in
eBaying those. And then when that is done, I'm probably going to have to, I don't know, go on Craigslist or OfferUp or one of these local places and see if anybody wants to
OfferUp. Is that a new thing?
That's one of those local, where you can kind of put your address in and put what you're selling on. The people come to your house and threaten to probably hurt you if you don't.
Yeah, I was gonna say just come, because that was worth making $15 on a thing. It's some stranger on the internet knowing my address and that I have other things. So, yeah, all right. I thought you're supposed to meet like in a parking lot someplace.
I guess that is the proper procedure.
You're like, I'm not going to do that.
Well, the one thing I did sell, I was selling some. I sold an amplifier.
Okay.
And I don't know. I was just thinking, okay, I wanted to move it. I wanted to sell it, so I put it up on it. It was good.
Sold an amplifier,
and it was the first time using the application. I was like, I was communicating with the guy who's was interested in it, and he seemed like a good guy. And I was like, all right, why don't you stop by?
Yeah, on the internet, he seemed fine.
It's in the garage. We could, we'll meet there.
Okay.
So
and you're still alive.
Yep. So I don't know. Maybe next time I might be a little bit more careful about who I, invite to my homestead, but we'll see.
There you go. Yeah, I think it's like the Sheetz parking lot. That's like go meet in a gas station someplace. I feel like that's the standard for those things.
But yes, I'm trying to simplify my life, Tim.
All right.
Trying to cut back on the distractions, trying to narrow down my the things that I work on, and also to keep my focus, trying to make my workspace, my computer setup, try to make it as efficient as possible. But as we attempted to do our show last week,
we did attempt. It was a failed one. It was a failed one.
And that was right at the beginning of this process where, I was thinking about, last week, the beginning of last week, I was thinking, when was the times when I was the most happiest as a developer?
What were those times, Mark?
When I was the most productive, when I felt like I was solving problems.
Okay. So is the times when you're the happiest? Were those also the times that you were the most productive?
Yes, they go hand in hand.
They go hand. Okay.
Yes. And so I was thinking, like, what, back in my life, when was those times? I've had multiple periods where I was like, I felt like I accomplished a lot. I was able to manage the stress, keep the distractions down, able to accomplish a lot. And I want to kind of get back to that. And I realized, one of the things I was using at the time was I was just on a single computer, and it was primarily just a laptop, and I kept things simple. And before, during the summer mark, I was definitely kind of pimping out my office space and my desktop. I took it to the extreme. I had 2 widescreen curved monitors. And then I guess 2 weeks ago, I added a third monitor, like one of those vertical
I feel like it would be like 4 weeks ago, because the title of this episode is the third screen.
Time.
Because we knew the third
evaporated.
So are you saying there's no more third screen?
I am down. That's why I have to kind of look at my camera now. I am like down to just one laptop.
So we titled the show to talk about your third screen, and your third screen is gone. You don't even have a second screen.
Exactly. I only have one screen.
You only have one screen.
Yep.
So so before I know you like the Surface Goes for portability.
So what
but you had a desktop too, right?
Yes, because before, along with the screens, I had a really nice office set up, and it was really great for teaching my classes, doing videos, doing this. Because if you're going to be streaming or recording a lot of video, having multiple screens is pretty much, you kind of have to have it, like me, especially if you're managing OBS and everything like that. But I've cut back on my lecture videos because I'm not teaching online as much. I'm primarily just teaching on campus. When I do videos, is really just shorter review videos. I don't need to put a lot of time or production into. So I thought, why don't I just move that computer? I still have the computer. I moved it to another room that's pretty much just my gaming computer that had my, the NVIDIA 380 card in it, or 3080 card in it, that I, still use for playing some games. But I also, like I said, going back to times when I wanted to limit my distractions, and games can be a little bit of a distraction. So I didn't want to have,
Can they?
on
Yeah.
my primary computer that I'm going to be doing my work on. I didn't want to have any games. I just want to kind of keep it focused on just my work. And so
Well,
I still
there's a real simple solution for that.
just not play games.
Just install Linux.
Well, we'll get there. We'll definitely get there.
I mean,
that was part of this
sorry.
journey for the past couple weeks.
Sorry, guys. It's like, there's Linux games, but you don't want to play them. That's the beauty of Linux games. You don't want to play them.
Yes. I had to tell you about my back and forth with the Linux this week too with that. All right. So I worked. I was in the process, and I was like, okay, I kind of want to. I have my one laptop is a Surface Go.
Right.
It's a,
right.
Windows Surface Go laptop, but actually the first version of it, version 1, and I loved it. It was it's the right size, portable. It was always low powered. It was one of those i5 quad core. Really kind of really low power processor, only 8 gigabytes memory. But for just doing basic,
for comparison's sake, my kids do their schoolwork on a Surface Go 3.
So that's it's definitely.
But yours is a laptop. It's not a Surface Go. It's the laptop,
the tablet laptop that has like the attachable.
It is. So it is a Go. Yeah, it's a Surface Go. Okay, yeah, that's the same.
Okay. So I was like, okay, I could use that for a little bit, but the one thing that I couldn't use it full time because of the screen. The screen is super small, and so if I'm going to be using this as my primary machine, and also performance wise, it's good enough for doing some programming. But then if I want to do anything in addition to programming, like if I want to record myself, if I want to play some audio in the background or video or something like that while doing some other stuff, it's multitasking. It's really not good for multitasking. It's
not great. Not great.
It's good for one task, and that hopefully that task is pretty small. So while I was in the process of kind of reworking my setup, I moved my computer thinking, I could use my Surface Go laptop for a couple of weeks. I intended to, okay, I'm going to sell this. Also probably get a different laptop. But our show came up. I was like, we've been putting off our show for a couple of weeks because of scheduling issues.
Yeah.
Like, I really want to do it. Miss talking to you. So I was like, this Surface Go, come on, what? I could do it. It could work out. Why not? So I started the stream up. The stream I saw you. I wasn't even trying to do. Initially, I was trying to do through OBS. I knew that wasn't working, so I stopped OBS, and then it was just okay. I'll just do the straight webcam. Just basically just try to do it as simply as possible. Once I started to record it with Audacity and the video streaming, it just all fell apart. The computer locked up, froze. I tried to reboot it. That didn't help. Started the stream. Yes, it was a disaster.
It did. Yeah, I was trying to think. There was something. I had an open plan for last week. Like I had a thing I was going to say. Couldn't remember it. I actually just remembered it, but I couldn't remember it when we were opening this one. And I tried to play the video back from the failed stream from last week, and no, there was nothing. It didn't even help me figure. Yeah, it was terrible. So anyway,
so what I'm doing now, and that's why I had to kind of rework my setup here. I have a nice kind of a desk camera, not really tripod. It's one of those poles that connect to the desk with the clamp pole or something like that for the camera. So that's kind of ahead of me. I did do some recording videos with it. It actually works for my class this week. Actually worked out pretty well, but pretty much just on one laptop. So what I've gotten now is the Windows Surface 5 laptop.
The Surface
5,
the
full 15-inch laptop seems to be working good.
Surface 5, is that new?
It's about the reason why I also got it because I got a good deal on it. It was about it's like 9 months old, and I saw that Microsoft was just having a recent update event last week, but the leak said they weren't going to be updating the Surface laptop they were going to be updating the Surface Go. So if you want a Surface Go laptop 3, that's out now. So they've updated those. But if you
The Surface Go laptop,
yeah,
not
so,
the
so like the
Surface
third
Go,
version,
which is different.
third revision
Yeah.
of what I had. But
Right.
if they weren't updating the laptop, the bigger, larger laptop, so it's a nice size. And, it's only 16 gigabytes memory. It is an i7. But I love the build quality. The Windows laptops, like the build quality,
They're nice.
It's like, yeah.
I'm very happy with my Surface Studio, which
Yeah.
is the like foldable laptop thing. And I sometimes I get confused with like why they have a laptop, they have the Surface, they have the Surface Studio, which is the laptop that you can
Yeah, I
reorient the
thought about that,
screen.
and that did
Like,
look
there's a couple
really
different.
interesting because it does have a dedicated
like it.
GPU.
It does.
The studio,
It
and
does.
it has that interesting kind of flip screen effect where you can kind of tilt the
Mhm.
screen and put it over the keyboard. So if you want to do some
Mhm.
drawing and sketching, and I was like, I was tempted by that.
You can flip it completely backwards too.
Yeah.
Because what I have right now is I have mine on a laptop stand, and it's flipped around, so it's like like instead of the laptop stand with the screen being behind the keyboard, the screen's in front of the keyboard because I don't even use the keyboard. It's just sitting there. So I find it very useful.
So I did consider that, even though I was unsure. I probably had to go to the store and play with the screen effect and see how sturdy the screen is, and when you convert it from like the laptop to like their studio setup where it goes over the keyboard and see how, I don't know, just see what the hardware is like. But then I was also thinking it's probably heavier battery life. I'm not sure about because it is using a dedicated GPU. So I don't know. So I was unsure about that because I still want to be able to have a little bit of a good battery life, even though the battery life's not the best in this laptop, but it's definitely better than having a dedicated GPU in it. So the laptop seems to be working good. The stream is still online,
Stream's good.
so I think we
Stream's
should
good,
be
yeah.
okay. But then the other thing I struggle with this week, because thinking about when was I also happy in the past when I was doing my
When
development?
were you happy, Mark?
When I was on Linux, Tim.
I mean, that's where
When
it's
I was on
at,
Linux,
right?
and I was thinking, well, if I'm gonna like,
Well, okay, I just want to tease this one out a little bit. It's not when you were getting to Linux, right? It's not like when you're trying to install Linux or try to get it working. It's when it was actually up and running and working, and you
when I was
forgot
being
you were on
productive, when I was
Linux.
doing a lot of web development purely on a
Right,
Linux
right.
machine, I
Okay.
did that for like a part of a summer, and I loved it, and it was great. And I was like, I've had good experience running.
Wait, are you saying that one time you've been happy as a developer was part of a summer?
No, when I was running
Is that-
Linux, when I went pretty much full Linux for almost the whole summer, and I was just
Okay.
when I'm in between my teaching year, my semesters, and it was great. But so I was like, I've had a good experience installing Linux on my Surface Go laptop, and I was like, okay, so why don't I try to do that? I just as a test, I downloaded Debian 12 because that seems to be all the rage the past month or so.
Is it?
And it's great. Well, the great thing about Debian is that it's the what I guess the upstream repo that
Mhm.
like Ubuntu. I was using, we
Yeah.
both used Pop OS for a while.
Pop OS, yep.
So
yep.
Mint, a lot of the Kali Linux,
Mhm.
all these kind of popular Linux distros are all derived from a Debian. So Debian
Mhm.
12 was released, I think, a couple months ago. And I saw, some people talking about it on YouTube and kind of seeing reviews about it. People are raving about it. And I tried it. Okay, tried it out. It was a quick install. It boots up super fast because that's one thing that Debian is that it is a great lightweight distributions, right? So if you want a kind of a bare bones distribution, it's great for that. And then my first experience with GNOME, 44?
Do you say GNOME?
GNOME. You got to say
is that
GNOME.
how you have to say it? You have to say
You
GNOME?
got to say GNOME. Don't say GNOME. Got to say
It's like the
GNOME.
MySQL people. The MySQL people want you to know that it's MySQL.
Or MySQL.
MySQL? MySQL? Is that for like MySQL?
But GNOME.
Okay, so
GNOME 44. Oh my gosh. When I eat
GNOME? Really?
just on my Surface Laptop Go, on that low powered machine, I've never seen a snappier interface. It was so fast. It had animation.
Wait, were you running this last week?
Yes. Well, no, no.
Okay.
I read it. No, you're jumping ahead here. No, I
Okay.
did run it last week, but it was before the show because I did decide, okay, if I'm going to be, okay, whatever. We haven't got there yet.
Distracted Mark now.
So I tried it out on just my Surface Laptop Go. It was amazing. like how fast it was, just moving between starting up applications, moving the windows back and forth, moving between desktops, just on this low power machine. It also just reminded me of the fact of like operating systems nowadays are so bloated, like Windows and even just other distros
Just get back to DOS
of
is really
Linux.
where we need to be.
It's so, but what Debian 12 with GNOME 44 does, it shows that like if you really do want to have a lightweight operating system that really should do what operators should do, it should get out of the way. It should be fast, efficient, get out of the way, let you move between applications.
I just want to say that the 3 Arch Linux users that are listening to this want you to know that there's a better distro out for that. And
I almost
simple.
did it. I was thinking about it. I was thinking about doing some Arch, but no,
hey,
I held back.
If you want that feature, it's easy. Just recompile your operating system.
But then it was such a great experience. Also, like, you know me, I love to spend most of my time in the terminal inside my TMUX and my NeoVim, and that's where I like to live.
Vim bindings,
oh my gosh, so fast, so smooth, and it's just it was great, right? And I was like, okay, if I could do this with the Surface Laptop Go, why can't I just do this with the Windows Windows Laptop 5 that I'm going to be getting? And I was like planning that. So, all right, so my plan is I'm going to get the new laptop. I'm going to put Debian 12 on it. I'm going to put Windows back on my Surface Go just so I can have a backup. You know, nice to have like a nice Windows backup just in case I need to definitely have, because I wasn't going to do a dual boot. I was just going to go full Linux. And
full Linux all the way.
That's what I was doing. So beginning of this week, that's what I started with, and it was working out. It was working great until I ran into
on your laptop, your Surface Laptop 5.
Yes, on the new Windows 15-inch Laptop 5. So it was working great. No, perfectly, totally happy with it. I was good to go. Now I didn't do any tests with like.
I'm waiting for this.
Didn't do any tests like the OBS and doing what we're doing today and with the recording and everything. That's because I've had issues with audio drivers in the past, so I was still a little bit skeptical. But I was like, all right, I'm holding out hope that it could work out. Then I experienced this weird issues that just sunk the boat. I think it was like Tuesday or Wednesday. I was saying, okay, I'm done for the night. I'm gonna power down the computer, close the laptop lid, go to bed. Did that. Woke up in the morning. I came down to my desk, and what I noticed, like my laptop is super hot. Like it was closed, hot, was super warm. Opened up, the whole keyboard's all hot. I was like, what is going on here? The screen wasn't on, nothing on. Didn't look like anything was on. I can't hear anything. Fans weren't even going. And then I realized what was happening was that the computer never fully shut down. It never fully powered down. So
at night it stays on to mine for cryptocurrency. It's a feature.
So this drove me crazy. So what I was doing, I spent the whole day kind of going through different scenarios, like powering down, I just doing the normal procedure of going to either doing through the command line. We do shutdown -H, or do like a halt command
to put into hibernate.
Yeah, different. No, I was trying to avoid hibernate altogether. I just want to shut it down. Basics of shutting down the computer. Doing the menu options, so through GNOME or doing on the command line, I just tried every different way. What was happening was that it would definitely look like it was powering off. The screen, all the the terminal commands are showing the computer was shutting down. The screen would go off. And the thing with the one downside about the Surface Laptop 5 is that there's no lights on at all. There's no power lights, so you can't really tell if it's there's no power. You can't tell at all. There's no way. It's which is great. It's simple. So what was happening is that it's shutting down the computer.
How can we make sure this thing boots really fast? But the power in the
computer was still on. Something was still there. And as all Linux users do, what do? They go on the internet, try to find other Linux users who had the same issue. And there are many people who have this issue, not just on Debian, but on other distros. I guess it is a thing with laptops or just computers
it's the thing
in general.
I thought it was with the hardware that there's not great. I forget what it is, but not. I feel like I've seen this before, where hardware that was built for Windows does not work well with whatever software control to turn off. I don't know what you call it, power management. And I know I've seen this before, where it's I'm running Linux on this laptop and I can't get it to actually turn off.
And it has to be on some level, some type of kernel issue, because a lot of people were saying was if you could find that right version of the kernel that supported your hardware, then you can, if you downgrade a kernel or upgrade it. Now I think can't remember the Linux kernel version that was on. There was a couple versions up than what Debian had installed. And I was like, I don't want to go through the process of installing a custom kernel.
Piano.
I don't want to either downgrade. I didn't want to deal with it because that's like, I love Linux. And I love the fact that I can customize anything on it, but I'm not a kernel guy. I'm not the one to go recompiling kernels or like just trying to manage that. I'm like, no, I'm not going to go that route at all. So what I did is I just, all right, pull the plug on that, install Windows back on it, back on WSL.
And the worst part of like the laptops is you can't unplug the power.
It's true,
right?
Yeah, it's a battery.
So
the only way is just to kill the battery. Just let it. Just hope that like, oh, it'll definitely shut down eventually.
Do you have a power button on it? Can you hold the power button forever?
Let's see. The power button's so minimal; it doesn't even have like a backlight. And I know my Surface, the Surface.
So you can't even tell if it's
Go
off.
laptop. It had like a little like the power button.
I'm on a call. Can you stop the piano?
the power button had like
that's not me talking to you. That's me talking to
the power button had a little bit of an LED behind it, so you could actually tell when it was on because you could see that the power on. Yeah, the power button on the laptop 5 is just it is a power button on the keyboard, but there's no light behind it. Or the keyboard light. Well, that's the thing too. There is LED on the keyboard, but then once the computer powers down, the keyboard light won't come back on. So it looks like there's no power there.
But it's still running.
But it's still something's still running.
I'm telling you, there was a meeting and people were like, how do we make our boot time faster? Someone's like, what if we never turn it off? What if it's always running and then the user thinks it's off? Yeah. And then they can be like, this thing boots in a microsecond. Well, it's a feature. It's a feature, Mark. It's not a bug. So you're running WSL on Windows, which I've been pretty pleased with. I found that. But I mean, I probably wouldn't be pleased with it if I was using a Windows device as my primary development system.
If you definitely compare it, because like I said, you've been on an Ubuntu or Linux or Pop OS for a lot longer than I have full time, and it is hard. Like once you experience like the full Linux experience, the full speed of that, and you use that as your primary kind of development environment, and then try to do that through WSL, it's not the same. It's doable, but at the same time, so I was able to configure WSL and some of the configurations I was working with it. I've got it to where it's manageable, and I'm happy with it. And also, they've actually just released a new version of it. Like they did a pre-release updated WSL 2 version, and with some new features. Because one thing about memory management was always kind of an issue with it, and they released a new version that it will throttle down the memory a little bit. So, seems like they're definitely doing improvements on it. So.
Yeah, I've had I don't use it a lot. It's weird the way I use it because I use JetBrains IDEs, right? So I run the IDE in Windows and I connect to WSL locally to do the as my dev environment, because that seemed to be the best way I could figure out how to do it. Because kind of running an application, running a graphical.
No, you should do it. Unless it's a very small, or unless it's a manageable. Like I said, I still run my Doom Emacs, so I run Emacs through it, which that's fine, that's fast. But if you're going to be running like anything like Blender or GIMP, or if you're going to be running like like any large application is going to take a good amount of memory. Yeah, you just want to do that directly in Windows, and then. Like so I do the same thing, and I actually try to do that in my Surface Go laptop. It definitely yelled at me saying, "Yeah, you do not have enough memory to do this." So do not
to run a JetBrains.
Do not try to do that if you only have 8 gigabytes of memory. You need at least 16 or more than 8 gigabytes because.
Well, because I mean, that's not enough memory to kind of have the two operating systems coexist, right? Like. I'm guessing just to do things in WSL, you need
it definitely because the memory will scale. Like right now, I think I still have it running in the background, so it's around like about 500 megabytes, but it could easily go up to 4 gigabytes in WSL, depending upon what you're doing with it. So you definitely need memory for it. And I know that JetBrains, when they or even Visual Studio, whenever they have like the interactions with the WSL runtime or accessing that through the IDE, definitely takes up memory and
okay, but I don't even do it that way. There is a way to. I know what you're saying, and I've seen kind of that in play. But what I ended up doing is just not trying to have the application access the WSL runtime, but just set it up to say it's a different computer. Connect to it remotely.
Okay.
Using JetBrains gateway concept, where it's like, oh yeah, no, I've got this other Linux server over here that I'm going to do development on. It happens to be the same computer. It happens to be the WSL on this computer, but basically SSH into it and run the IDE in WSL and have the UI in the on the Windows.
So it's curious. So you chose to do that instead of just using the WSL as the subsystem just to access the project with? You doing it?
Yeah, I forget why. There was some reason at the time. And I don't do a lot of it, so that's like this was me saying, "All right, I'm going to be at a conference." Usually, I connect back to my desktop, my dev desktop, and just use my Windows laptop as a client and connect to my development system here in the office. I'm like, I don't want to do that from Chicago during a presentation. Who knows? So I need something locally. So for that, I don't know. I think the issue was I was running Docker, and it seemed to struggle to. It felt like it was a struggle for me to kind of have it run the IDE in Windows and connect to WSL, because I think they try to share the file system. I don't know. It was just confusing. It didn't work. It seemed clunky, at least whatever I was trying to do. And a much more straightforward solution for me was just pretend you're a thin client, connect to this Linux system, which happens to be WSL. And now when I bring up a terminal, it's a terminal in WSL. There's no file permissions that the IDE is confused about, because it's using, whatever JetBrains gateway uses to connect to that system. So that worked out pretty well for me. At least I thought so.
Yeah.
So how's the summer mark, Mark?
Well, the summer mark has led to me giving my 2-semester resignation.
Oh, so instead of a 2-week notice, you give a 2-semester notice?
That's what I did. Yes. So at the beginning of the semester,
So
I talked
that's
to.
That's a full school year then, right?
Yes, I thought that was kind of a good plan. The wife and I think that's based on her retirement plans and based on kind of my timeline and what I'm thinking about we could do for transitioning out. I think that works out well. And I think for me, I want to, I've talked to you about this before. Leaving the school was always a big challenge for me. How to do that transition and how to, because it's when you go from let's say one developer job to the next in the industry, you can give your 2 weeks notice, put in a little more time, boom, you're done, and then you're out the door, right? But leaving kind of mid-semester or even between semester, depending on the time, like leaving, you could definitely do it at the end of the fall, but then timing that between the fall with the Christmas break, and it's real super tricky. So when most people transition between academic jobs or in and out, they usually do during the summertime, but then timing that's kind of tricky. So yeah, I talked to my direct manager and talked to my dean, and they're happy the fact they gave them notice, because then they have a good amount of time now to start to think about who they might want to work on for a replacement. I'm going to help them out with that too. So I think it's a good relationship. So I have a good reference, and yeah. So instead of I was thinking about this, instead of being like, I remember how Cortez got to Mexico and he burned the ships. Yeah, I thought, why don't I just burn the ship while I'm still in the water, and just like
while you're still in the water,
and then
right?
if I have to swim to the shore, all right, make it work.
I mean, so yeah, all right. So now we don't not there. What do I don't even know I don't even know where to go from there, because I can't now do the tongue in cheek. I hope your coworkers aren't listening, because apparently they know.
Well, that's the other thing about I can be totally upfront with them. Like I needed to have that. My personality is I don't know. It's like my Jason, we both, Jason Zulli, he's my office mate. And I've always been kind of keeping him in the loop about kind of where my mind was and kind of my time frame, everything like that. But then the rest of the department and everybody else at school, I just wanted to be more upfront, because the thing about, they're going to ask you they keep asking you to do things, in that semester or just stuff for the future. And I kind of just want to be upfront with everybody, saying, yes, I'm not going to be here forever. I do have a timeline, and I wanted to do it the right way, so that I could be able to leave it. But then also that gives me a chance too, that if, while I'm looking, if an opportunity would open up and I want to make the transition early, then the pieces are in place for me to do that.
Gotcha.
So it'll be easier then for me to transition out mid-semester or near the end of the semester or whatever, whenever that happens.
So what you're saying is you got about another week or two, and then you're heading out. So,
well, I got to finish up the certifications first.
Coworkers aren't listening. Hope
we're going to finish up the certifications, and once that happens, then we'll see.
Hey, have you taken all the tests with the very invasive testing company?
No, I still have. I'm still putting those off, but I still got to. Yeah, my plan is to finish up got to do the solutions architect. I want to do the AWS developer. So
can we just say that this is a professor that's pushing off taking a test? And it just seems so right. It just seems
the older I get, the more aware I am of myself that I'm a horrible multitasker. That's why I need to just get rid of all the screens, Tim.
That's why you get
rid of all the screens. Stay focused on one thing, one screen, one laptop.
Writing
stay
that
in the
PHP
zone.
code.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Or no, you're gonna type commands into the cloud. What was it? The cloud development SD, the CDK,
CDK,
cloud development kit.
CDK.
So you're gonna run some scripts there. It's gonna make some stuff, and you're gonna have serverless infrastructure.
Infrastructure's code, Tim. Loving the CDK.
Yeah.
So,
all right.
Yeah.
Well then,
but then again, think about my past. I did have some good time working on some PHP. The last time that I enjoyed my PHP work was back in the Zen framework days. So
it's changed a little bit since then. We've got some nifty things.
Yeah.
Nifty things in PHP 8. That's for sure. At 8 point whatever we're at now. I think 8.2 are we? I don't know. No, I think that we're about to release. I don't know. I'm obviously not writing all the code in that yet, but we're gonna get there close. So I remembered how I wanted to open the show 30 minutes ago. So it's been, what is this? This is episode 67. Can you believe it?
67.
I think for most podcasts that may not be exactly a milestone, but for us, I think 67 episodes. That's it.
Maybe
67
we will
hours
eventually get our act
Mark.
together and actually make something real out of this by episode 100. We'll see.
No. I mean, that would ruin the whole feel. Because the thing I was gonna say is the one thing I never wanted this to be. I never wanted it to have this, opening, bumper music, all that, and then come on and we're like, it's the Dev Friday show.
It's true.
Episode 67, September 22nd.
I listened to a lot of those.
2003. Yep. I didn't want that NPR style, I want it to be a little bit more real, right? A little bit more. But I also want to automate this stuff. And trying to get transcripts, trying to get show notes, and me remembering, because I never get to this one, hopefully. All right, this is the show, right? So I'm gonna we'll get back to it, right? My button is broken. My cough button, where I press it to not hear the mic, it's broken. So I'm gonna unpress it, so you shouldn't hear me, but you can still hear me, right? And it may fade in and out because it's a bad connection in this cough button. So because of that, don't worry, I'll get to this point. Because of that, when I had children come in the room a little bit ago, I actually had to turn myself down on the board. But turning myself down on the board, that stops it from going out over the live stream. It does not stop it from being recorded.
Okay.
Because that takes up a different feed. So now I'm going to have to, while I still hopefully fresh in my memory, go back and edit out the time where I'm like, no, you can't be up here. I'm doing a podcast. So that doesn't make it to the mix. Because generally speaking, I don't get to mixing a show until the Thursday night before the show. The next show, because Friday after we're done, we got work stuff, and then I'm out early Friday, and so it's I should get the show up before we have our next show. So I end up mixing it Thursday night, and by that time, I don't remember what we talked about, Mark. I mean, do you remember what we talked about? I have no idea. So I have to listen and kind of look at the YouTube transcript and be like, what did they talk about? So I'm like, there's gotta be. Also, we're all over the place. Why? But that's what we are. We're all over the place. I've other times when I've either given talks or mess things like that, they're recorded, and I've taken the transcript and I've actually given it to ChatGPT and said, hey, here's a transcript of me giving some type of presentation. Can you write a blog post of the similar content? And I will say it's terrible. I mean, it's not good at all. It feels like the most, I don't know what you want to say. When you're reading that blog post that was only written to appeal to SEO, and because someone says, hey, if only we had an article about this topic, and someone's like, I could research it and write it, and it feels like that. Doesn't feel right at all. I'm like, you literally have my voice as a transcript. You literally have my voice in the way that I talk. Could you make it sound a little bit more like me? But no. So I'm Googling for a couple different reasons. I'm looking, and it isn't. That's an aside too, right? We use Google as a verb for search, right? And do you DuckGo?
I think you should Bard it, Tim.
I Bard it. It may be that I should Bard it. I've heard that Bard's going to be better, is getting better, and can actually reach into your Google Drive and Docs now and answer you.
It's not too bad. I default to using Bard. I default to Bard, and then if Bard feels like, all right, there's nothing there, then I'll go to ChatGPT and then see what it says. But I default to Bard because, like I said, I think that's kind of the low bar. So once also I'm interested to see when Bard actually gets better than ChatGPT, or see if it eventually does. So I usually default to Bard first, and actually I do prefer the interface of Bard more. I think it just has a better interface than ChatGPT.
Yeah, because sometimes it gives you like multiple, like, hey, is this a better answer? And you can kind of like choose your own adventure
and they source
with how the
and
conversation is going to go.
where it's coming, where they. But some,
well, that makes
not
sense
100% of the time, but it's interesting though, seeing, especially if you ask them a technical question, they will put some source links down at the bottom.
That's nice.
Yeah.
And that feels right for Google, right? Because it's Google. You're like, hey, we do search. Maybe I should play with Bard more. I should play.
I just default to it, but then I still use ChatGPT because eventually
I love the generative results now for searches though on Google. Have you played with those?
Yeah, I've seen them pop up.
You'll do. I mostly do. Like, you want a generative result?
Yeah, I mostly do the Brave search because I use the Brave browser, Tim.
Oh, because it pays you for using it.
It pays me, but also I like my privacy, my security. So that's why I use the Brave browser.
I'll be honest. Life's too short for me to be caring about that stuff. Anyway, that's just people are gonna be like, "Oh, it's not. It's the most important thing in the world."
So the Brave browser has its own Brave search.
Does it?
And the search, when it first came out, wasn't too good. It's gotten a lot better, and they actually have their own kind of AI block at the top that actually is. They basically take like the top 3 or 4 results, and they kind of like mash them up together and like basically kind of one AI output. And it's okay sometimes, and it's useful. Okay. But but sometimes it doesn't give me good results. Then I have to do like the little hash bang or bang a G or bang Google to like do the search.
Do the search in Google.
Yeah, to like pipe it back into Google, and then I start seeing the AI kind of search results they're integrating those more in the results. It's just kind of interesting.
They are. Oh, but why not? We're on so many different. It's like a fractal of discussion. We just keep going.
Well, you're talking about the transcribe service. So I was wondering because
I'm going to get back to that.
Amazon does have.
Give me a
transcribe service.
Now this is what it is. This is what it is. This is what it is.
Now that you're all in. So if you want to send it some audio, you could see how well it could output the text for that.
You're all in on AWS now, huh? So speaking of having people come over to get stuff from your house and how creepy that is, where we started the show. It was months ago now. We thought that there may have been someone kind of snooping around the house for a couple different reasons. So I was like, all right, it's time for cameras. I mean, I don't like that, but it's time for cameras.
Yeah.
And I get it. Google knows too much about me, right? I get the privacy concerns. I understand them. People are going to be like, no, you don't, because if you did, but did we talk about this?
No.
I don't feel like we talked about it. I feel like I had this conversation with somebody else. Because do you have a NAS?
Yes.
Like a network attached storage?
Just my Drobo. Remember Drobo?
No.
My Drobo's still running.
Drobo?
Well, Drobo's before Synology.
Yeah.
It was primarily back when Macs were big. Well, they still are, but back in the day when I was using Mac for full time.
This is great. I'm so excited about this news because I didn't realize
when I was using a MacBook Pro for the full time. And to me, the Mac world was big for me. Now it's not. I don't really care.
I love it.
I was tempted by the M2. I was tempted by that.
You heard it here first,
folks. And I was tempted. I was like,
Apple's reign is
MacBook
over.
Air 15 M2. I was a little bit tempted, but I was like, I don't want to go back to that world. Oh.
No. Stay on the dark side with the Microsoft stuff. Anyway, so you got a Drobo.
So like a Drobo, and it's funny, they went out of business. So if you go to Drobo, just Google Drobo or Drobo.com, you'll see the company went out of business. But my Drobo's still running, and if a drive goes out, it's hot swappable. Pop a new one back in.
Yeah.
The applications still work, and I'm still loving it until it actually breaks. That's what I use.
So I've got a Synology. I've got a Synology with 6 drives. I think they're all 4 terabyte drives that's configured for RAID 6. So I forget what the math is, but I think you get about 12 terabyte out of that with a hot swap. So you could 2 hot swaps actually. You can lose up to 2 drives and still rebuild it. And Synology has cameras, right? So it's like I could put Synology cameras out,
and it would record directly to the NAS then.
Right, they record to the NAS. I could set all that up. Do you know how much time and effort that would take me? I did not do that. I went to my local hardware store and bought a bunch of Nest cameras and just stuck them around the house. And on my phone, hit a button, and it just worked.
Yeah.
So I had monitoring for the house, and people are gonna be like, "But that's Google that's looking at your cameras too." Yeah, maybe it is. I know. But I can't do more, right? Like, so for me, it's just I get it.
And even
it.
for them, I think,
Trot out the Ben Franklin quote: "Those that trade their security for convenience from Google." I get it, but for me, it just worked.
yeah,
And
and I have the Nest doorbell.
yeah,
And so
okay,
that was interesting because it was like I was, sort of when you had the house rebuilt and the contractors did not install the doorbell correctly.
how do you not install a
They
doorbell
did not
correctly?
remember because they had multiple electricians work in our house, and apparently the first electrician who actually ran the power line for the doorbell did not tell the other electrician where it actually, and then he left the company. So like barring them having to rip up the walls to
We don't know
find
where
a
the
doorbell power line, they're like, well, there's a bunch of these remote ones that are like, battery powered. Why don't you just get one of those? And I was like, oh my gosh. So I was like, fine, I'll just get a battery rechargeable Nest doorbell. I have to recharge it like every couple of weeks. So that's a little bit of a pain, but
yeah, so the cameras are the
but the
same.
performance is
Like
great. I agree. Like the video recording, and it's interesting too. If you just pay, it's not that expensive. For like, it's like it's called like Nest Aware. It's like $6 or $10 a
Yep.
month, and then they'll
And-
record it. They have history of that, and so it's
they
great.
don't charge you, like, it doesn't matter how many devices.
Yeah,
So we've got a larger property here, right? Like I can throw cameras everywhere,
yeah.
and I only have the cost of the camera, and with the Wi-Fi coverage, it just works. And it's like, yeah, I know I could run it myself, and then people would be like, and see, you're not giving your data. I know I could do all that, but the level of effort and maintenance it would take me to do that versus buy it, hit a button on my phone, and stick it on the wall, like that's a different thing. And so I get it. I get that whole thing. And we got here from what? Google? Is that what we got here
Well,
for?
bringing this
Privacy?
back to like developing, because it's interesting because talking about distractions and being sidetracked, because those types of projects, those would be really interesting if you had time.
They would be. That'd be fascinating to be able
If
to
you could
do
just
that
hack
stuff.
together your own set of cameras and like build like a server application that would be pulling the video feed, or pulling the images that are coming out of it. It would be interesting to kind of throw that together, but who has the time
like
for that?
I can know how to do that, and yes, it could be interesting to do it, but yeah, you can't do everything, right? Like, so it's all a trade-off of what's the most important thing to focus on. So anyway, transcripts. I want like I gotta mix this down. I gotta create some show notes so I can at least tell somebody what episode 67 was about. And I'm not gonna remember in a week, so I'm Googling, and I'm Googling because I don't care about my privacy. I'm Googling, like, okay, I want to take audio, transcribe it, and then have AI kind of summarize it in an intelligent way. Like, give me some services there, because I have other uses than just this podcast, right? Like, every time I give a presentation, it'd be cool to also be like, just feed it that, and then write me a post that I can just massage a little bit, and it's pretty close. And I've not found it yet, just using tools like ChatGPT plus a transcription service. So I was playing with a couple of them. One of them is Podium.io, and there was another 2 or 3. I think it's Podium. Maybe it's not even Podium. Maybe it's Podium.ai. I don't know. Sorry, Podium people. You're not a sponsor. If you want to be, hit me up. I don't think you do, because it's not, this is the quality you're going to get. This is the quality you're going to get. Podium.page. What in the world? .page? Sorry. Chances we're going to get, I have 0 credits now. Oh boy.
So that is the top level domain for their .page.
I've used all my credits. I don't know how I've used.
They don't even use like .co or .
I know, it's putting a page, but anyway,
Jeez.
You just throw them a file, and they will give you a transcription. Like, if I look at this right now, it's the UI. It's a super. I'll give them this. It's super MVP in that they just give you a zip file that you download, and inside the zip file, you have all of the things that they have generated from your audio, which I'll have. I'm trying to find one right now just so I can give an example. They have highlights, they have show notes, they have transcription, and then also transcription that's encoded with whatever you would need to do, like captions with the timestamps and everything. So that's what they give you. And I'm like, all right, this is cool. There's show notes. Maybe I could get show notes from it. They read our show notes like we're some NPR show. It is the most, like, we're not impressive. Like, we're irreverent. We're silly. This is the feel of the show, right? And they give me these things like, join my friend Mark and me as we candidly discuss the challenges of job hunting, particularly within the tech industry. I'm like, this is not our show, right? This is not what I want. I don't want the, welcome to episode 67. We explore our encounters with recruiters offering positions that don't quite match the compensation we believe is due and the difficulty finding the right job that fits our skill set and passion. So, better yet, a couple episodes ago, in this episode, we also explore the world of model rocketry. Did we explore the world of model rocketry, Mark?
Yes, we did.
Or did we talk about how much fun it is to shoot things into the sky? I mean, this is like, I don't think we explored it. Discussing the fun, frustration, and learning that comes with attempting to build and launch a model rocket. Listen to us as we muse over possibilities modern technology presents, like adding cameras to rockets. Yes, that's kind of what beautiful. We did, but that is not. That is
if I was looking to sponsor podcast and I heard or if I read a transcript like that, I would just hop on board.
Remember a couple weeks ago, I talked about how I got the gel blasters out to shoot people with it. This is listen as we celebrate special family moments and navigate through exciting games like paintball and gel blaster guns. Give me a break. We recount a hilarious family reunion that was made even more memorable with gel blasters and share the ups and downs of juggling everyday life. Whether it's rushing to meet a lawyer or celebrating a birthday, every day is a new adventure.
I like that.
That is not even close to what you would expect. Let me say that again. If you read that and then listened to our podcast, I don't think you would get what you thought you were getting. So I said, all right, maybe I can use AI and AI. So I took my show notes and my style and I fed them to ChatGPT. I'm like, this is what I'm looking for. And then I said, this is what they're giving me, and it's far too serious. Can you give me like a shorter, sarcastic, kind of tongue-in-cheek version of this? So it did a decent job. I was impressed. You ready for this? This is from just, I think, the last show, because it's been a month, right, since we've had a show. I think this is the last show. Tim barely survives a family reunion turned gel blaster battlefield. That's exactly our style. While Mark's convinced AI will make his next diet plan.
Diet plan?
I know. I was like, I went back and I actually listened to our show and read through the transcript. I'm like, you never said, I mean, it feels like something we would do in this show.
Well, most I've talked about is my intermittent fasting. I think that's probably the most, that's where my diet plan ends, but.
So I'm not sure. I'm not exactly sure where it's, but I could definitely see that being a topic. I could see that it makes sense for us. Yeah. Between stressing about family genes and using ChatGPT for, well, everything, we've also got some thoughts on Senzi's Domain of the Month deal. All right, that was a little like that's.
I like my domains.
Dive into a whirlwind of tech rants, health obsessions, and why going back to work feels like recovering from a food coma. And that part was actually pretty good because we talked about, like, you talked about how like you had to get back into the flow after being away for a little bit. It's all here, buckle up. So that was pretty good. I feel like my process now is have Podium give me show notes, and they even give chapters and everything, which could be useful if I could just spice up the chapters a little bit. But to be honest, our show is so weirdly structured, chapters don't really make sense all the time. But yeah, take show notes from Podium, then feed them to ChatGPT for him to give me something that feels a little bit more like I would write it. So we'll see.
Oh, it sounds like this something you could just IFTT it.
Yeah, because there's an IFTT ChatGPT plugin now.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
and it's like if this happens, then
pipe that data anywhere. Yeah.
So when are we going to have the AWS large language model pipeline?
I know with what we can do the transcribe, we can do this. We can pump into SageMaker and see what it could spit out. Yeah, we should try to.
What's SageMaker?
Well, SageMaker is Amazon's learning model framework or service that you can use to build your learning models on. Send it some data, and then it could with some metadata and some configuration, you could start to build your learning models from that. So it's kind of like the underlying infrastructure. If we wanted to make our own ChatGPT, our own app that wasn't based on ChatGPT, which everybody seems to be doing now. If we wanted to do something a little more original, we could build it off top of that.
Yeah, because people are building things on top of the existing large language model.
Yeah.
and then tuning it for their use. But you're saying
You can make your own. Yeah, they have existing
you'd actually
models
have
that
to
you could
feed it.
leverage
Oh,
or
do they?
start with. Yes, they have existing models, or
Oh,
you can
cool.
build your own. So,
What about was it the llama model, the stuff that coming out of Meta?
oh, Facebook. Yeah, they made an announcement. I
Yeah,
didn't dig into that. I saw. Yeah, they were doing some
They're
AI
really, and
announcements.
they're
Yeah,
open sourcing a lot of
Yeah.
it, which is interesting. Oh, I also gave Stable Diffusion. They have stable audio now.
Oh,
Where you
really?
describe like the audio. It was terrible. I mean, maybe my description was terrible, but it was not what I was thinking I would get as an output. So there's that. Anyway, so yeah, that's what I was going to open with, was the fact that that if we wanted to sound like NPR, the transcripts I'm getting from Podium would set us up pretty well for that.
I know. If we wanted to level up the show, Tim.
Level up the show. I don't think that's leveling up. I don't know. You think we get more listeners that way? You don't even know how many listeners we have, because you won't look at the stats. You won't look at the stats.
So either way, it's bad news. If I look at the stats, and it's like in middle ground. Like if a lot of people listen to it, which is not the case, but let's say there would be. Let's say there'd be like, I don't know, let's say over 1,000 people listen to it. That'd start to freak me out. I'd be, all right, this is crazy, because I'm like, 1,000 people should not be listening to us. If it's like 100, okay, I could feel that would actually, I'd be happy with that. If it was 10, I'd be like, well, yeah, why to look? Why do I even want to know?
What if it's 1? Or like,
well, exactly.
I hope that person's very interested in.
So there's a sweet spot there, but I don't even think we even got to that point. But I don't know. Who knows?
And how do you even gather those stats, right? Because it's the RSS.
Well, I know. Yeah, I could always check out iTunes, because that still is the number one place for podcasts. I could definitely do that, but it'll also Spotify.
That wouldn't even give you. Oh, Spotify would give you the listeners.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't delved into that. I just know that I check, because I do primarily listen to Spotify for my music, and I do subscribe to our feed just so I can make sure that when we do updates, I can see that there's a new show there.
Is there? I wonder. But like any other podcast aggregator that somebody has that's just using our RSS feed doesn't tell us anything, because we don't have anything set up on the site to. Well, and even if we did have something on the site to track downloads, that doesn't help us either, because I would hope most aggregation.
Now there is, if we had in the podcast 2.0 spec, there is something. There's like there is like a ping back or something. I forget what they call it. But there is a mechanism that they have that if the application that the person's listening to is 2.0 compatible, then it will send a message back, and you can keep track of that. But
I feel like my gut says most of those apps I might be trending that way, because if you're actually listening to a podcast app that isn't Spotify, that isn't iTunes, that isn't one of those kind of mainstream apps, that you're probably more interested in cutting edge features, and those apps are probably looking at how they can integrate with what is it, Podcast 2.0? Is that the
well, it's interesting. The one app that because I did test a lot of those podcast 2.0 apps out, and they're okay. But the one app that I on Android, and also I use it on iOS, that I really like is the Podcasts. Pocket Casts. Which guess who bought that a while ago? Was a WordPress or Automatic.
Really?
So what they do is because Automatic has a nice plugin that you could, if you have a podcast site and you want to use their podcast plugin to connect with the so they have their own network that they've indexed through all of their WordPress sites that are using their podcasting plugin, and they keep track of. So if you search their index, it primarily just uses, because there are some, like if I know there's a podcast like I don't know, there's a couple podcasts I know that's just 2.0 podcasts that don't like to be on iTunes or Spotify. They don't come up on the search as much, because it defaults to their own index first. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll eventually get there, as long as we get back on track.
Well, yeah, because we're gonna change the deployment. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Like just dragging a file.
That's the dream.
That's the dream.
It's the dream.
That's the dream. That's the dream, which we don't have yet. So all right.
Eventually, we could just drop in the audio file and everything that you described here in the show by doing the transcriptions, integrating with a little bit of AI to output the chapters and the I don't know, do they have an transcripts?
I doubt Podium has an API, but like I said, it's so bare bones with their interface. I can't see them like that. That seems like something they might want to give you. right? Because then we could just say, hey, here's the transcript. And what's nice, the one thing that still have to be manual, and I know everybody's super interested in what goes on behind the scenes of the show, is the audio that we mix from the two of us,
Mhm.
right? Because I take two mixes. One is a mix that has you and me just slightly panned to either side, and that's good, I think, for listening, and it has the bumper music. And then I have another one that is exactly the same time, but it has no bumper music, and we are panned to both individual channels. And for that makes transcription a breeze, because most transcriptions are like able to say, oh, there's one speaker in the left channel, one speaker in the right channel. Yeah, I know who's who. I don't have to try to detect the voices. And it tends to pick that up really well. And so that process still kind of is a, because we both have our recordings, you got to size them up, sync them up. But then once that's done, if we just upload the files and it publishes it, generates show notes get pulled in, we basically have AI tell us what they think the show should have been. Because adding things that we didn't actually talk about.
So back in the early show, when you kept saying you're trying to remember what you were trying to open with, I actually had something I was going to ask you too that I was going to open with, and it just came back to me in the last 5 minutes here.
Cool. We have 5 minutes.
4 or 5 minutes that we have here.
Time. Yeah, let's do it.
If JetBrains changed their business policies, and you had to report how many people were using your web applications that you built with JetBrains products, and you were charged a fee.
This is interesting.
Would you still use JetBrains products to build your web applications with?
Wow. So this is all about Unity then, huh?
It is. And it's unfortunate. And I don't like to, and I feel like it's old news now because I don't like to rehash stuff. And like, if we talked about this and we were able to actually get online and talk about this right when it's happening, it would have been interesting because I have a lot of experience with Unity. I taught it for a couple of years.
Did it just happen over the last week?
It was about 2 weeks ago. First broke, and then last week, then it kind of came to a head. Now they're slowly kind of trying to figure out a way to walk it back. But they really haven't. So it's still kind of going on. But it was just the revolt that happened with Unity developers, and because they were charging, they said they're going to charge per install, like they had like a runtime fee. So how many installs they had, they would have to pay based on a revenue model that based on your revenue model. So I don't know if they made, I don't know. I had to look at the sheet for the cutoff, but if they made a certain amount of money, then they would have to charge a certain amount of like a fee for each install.
Per install.
So that's why developers are freaking out saying like, this is craziness.
Exactly. That's not an apples to apples.
I know.
Comparison to like JetBrains, but that would be like well, it's crazy too, because it is per install. It's a tough one, right? Because you are installing their library on a system, right?
But a lot of these applications, or a lot of these games or applications are free. That's where a lot of the developers are doing. Because that's their business model, saying, okay, let's release multiple versions, or at least the first version or beta version is going to be free, so we can get a good so we can get a good install base.
Ad driven too.
Yes. Oh yes. Also ad driven too. So like, let's get a good install base going, because that's how apps become popular, and they can actually make money once they get a certain number of users on it. But so you're saying they're going to charge, which is just crazy. And also it also goes back to the fact like their business model was always screwed up in the sense where Unity was always trying to walk the line with a subscription model, which other companies like JetBrains and even Adobe does this better. Like, even though Adobe feels like it might be a little bit high, but you get, let's say, pay one price for the whole suite of applications.
The whole suite, yeah.
Just like with JetBrains, you could do the same thing. So Unity was charging a subscription model. If you want to do like their Unity Plus plan or something like that to have some additional features and whatever, just be considered Unity Professional. But then they were losing money. It is crazy how much money they're losing. Like they make like, I think like $500 million, like $500 million every quarter, but they lose like close to $2 billion a year. So there's something not right. I know, it's crazy messed up. Like their business model and how they handle their finances. And so what they did, they need to turn a switch, and they just jumped the shark and
this is what they wanted to do. Crazy. Yeah. I mean, because it is different in that you're building an application on their technology that is then installed on the user's computer, right?
Yep.
And that's not the same as like, you run a website. Yeah, it's built on PHP. Well, how many servers run PHP? Or even if you're doing something silly and like building a web server on IIS or something, you pay generally. I know that's changed a little bit, but a lot of times the model was how many installs you have. But then there are even things like IIS. I don't know if IIS did this, but how many users access it, and that's a different thing from a web standpoint. But here you're actually installing their software on people's computers as a runtime. I mean, licensing makes sense, but I can see why the community's upset about it because it's a big change.
But then people could just install the software, uninstall it, and reinstall it again, and they're still going to charge you for it.
Now that we're done, run that by me again. They can install.
No, that was the other big thing of that fact of like somebody could do what's, I don't know what they were calling.
Oh, because you're going to charge for install,
like a hate install or something like that. So if let's say if they had like a mob,
no, it has to be unique user.
Well, no, they were said that
but that's what I'm saying.
Each unique install, it could be the same user. But each unique install was going to be count as a separate install. So if users just want to just flame them and just be like, okay,
but not a reinstall.
Yeah,
but I mean, but that would include a reinstall because I can even see each unique install. Like if I install something on my desktop and on my laptop, that's two installs. That's two seats.
Yeah,
but it depends too, right? Like some companies would say that's not 2 seats.
Yeah,
some companies like Autodesk for Fusion.
Yeah,
I can only run it on one computer at a time.
Yeah,
you know, because I have a 1-seat license, so they're completely fine with me installing it on multiple computers. But if I fire up my my Surface Pro and open up Fusion, it's like, hey, you're running this in Surface Studio. Do you want to suspend that? Yep, sure, go for it, because they want to make sure not multiple people are using it at the same time.
Yeah, but
yeah, if they're charging like it's a fee that you get charged for an install.
Yeah, it's crazy. But it's also one thing's amazing about this, the fact like it seems like so many companies figured this out. Like, even though users aren't entirely happy with, like, I'm not entirely happy with the cost of, the Creative Cloud, but I understand it and it's understandable. They don't get crazy by raising the price each year. Even JetBrains, like, it's like between $200 to $300 for like a subscription for that. It's a little bit costly, but if that's what that's your business, and that's what you're making your money off of, then fine.
Shout out to JetBrains though. It gets cheaper every year.
Well, that's true. They have another angle to it. But the fact, like, it seems like these companies with either the license model, like the subscription model, or even with Unreal, they have like a 5%. If you make $1 million, then you just have to pay 5% of your revenue. So even like a rev share.
I like rev share. Rev share to me in this context makes sense because it's not like like Creative Cloud. You may say you're like the works that you derive, you make with it, then are whatever you're selling and making money over. On that's fine, but it's not their IP.
Yeah,
it's your IP that you created with them. But you're using Unreal's IP.
Correct. Yeah, if you're using
their code,
their engine.
Is built into your application. So I can see rev share seems great. I mean, it really depends on your business model, and you can't the community can be upset about what they're doing. It's their IP. They can do with it what they want, right? I mean, within reason, and who knows? I guess lawyers be lawyers. It's really what's the best way to do it. To me, if you're saying what was it? No, what's the other thing that's not Unreal?
Godot. Well, Godot's the open source.
No. The other one you just said did a rev share.
Well, no, Unreal Unreal has the rev share. Unity was going to do. They were going to do a fee plus a rev share too. They were doing double. They were saying, yes, if you make this certain amount of money, we're also going to worse
because they took away like they had a GitHub repo that showed the changes to their license agreement, and they just got rid of it.
Yeah, they deleted that repo, so then the people couldn't track the changes, and it was just kind of, it's weird. But I also remember too, back when I was teaching Unity, and I was promoting it in the school, I was teaching it, and I was showing the students how to kind of make some simple games and simple projects, because their model was actually very student and user friendly. Where like they were advertising saying, "Oh, you will never have to pay a revenue share. All we're going to ask is if we'll offer some additional services that will cost like a subscription model. If you want these services, pay extra cost for these professional services." But then we were never going to be Unreal, and we were never going to charge a revenue share. That's where they always marketed themselves, and now they completely did a 180 on that. They even go like farther worse than that.
They wanted to be the library or the engine that everybody used.
Yeah.
I kind of remember that. Like every app, it didn't matter. Like you're picking a 2D scroller. I use Unity.
Correct. Yeah.
Because Unreal was very much 3D world. I know you can probably do that with Unreal, but it seemed to me even from the outside,
back in the day, when they were doing that too, the Unity I think was used in more industries than I think Unreal was. So Unreal was, they've definitely had their visual effects kind of niches, and then definitely the game space. That's where they had most of their sources from. But Unity was used in a lot of different industries, like automotive, architecture, a lot of different industries, not just game related. So they could diversify a lot more. And then I think what happens, Unreal start taking those markets from Unity. And so more people that was going more the high end markets where they're actually were getting their higher end subscriptions and their own services from were going then to Unreal. And so I don't know, they felt they had to compete with Unreal, but now they totally lost the faith of all the indie developers and the small developers. And yeah, it's crazy.
The developer community is not a community to, what do I want to say, to make decisions lightly with.
Yeah.
Just I'm sure there's reasons why that if I thought about it, I could probably figure out why, but it's just
so now you have the market split now with like half the Unity developers who are need to switch. They're like the lower end ones or the indie ones are going to Godot, and then the higher end ones that are actually making money and they feel like, okay, well, how are we going to either support the current game or even just going forward our new games? They're just going to Unreal. So they tell like the developers is going to two different places because Unreal's or Unity's just become like a toxic asset now, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah,
because I haven't seen like a company like implode this like in this way, so like visually it's so weird. It's kind of it was crazy the past couple of weeks since it happened. It was like then they were just they had stuck their foot in the ground too about, and they weren't going to back down from it. They were just like,
and now it looks like they are. They're trying to
because,
or at least say that they're
because it is a public company and they are going to get.
Are they really?
Yeah, I think pretty
time to short that.
Pretty sure they are. Yeah. Pretty sure they're a public company. So like, I think they are, let me actually this here. It's Unity stock. Pretty sure I thought they were a public company.
Unity software. Yeah, it looks like it.
It's their stock price now.
Not doing well.
But they took a hit last week. So 5 days. So what is it? Last month. So they what 40 and now they're still like what at low 30s. The high was,
but that actually year to date, that doesn't look bad. Like the hit, I mean that their high was high 40s.
So it's definitely a downtrend. So it's a matter of like, can they correct it before it?
But you look at their max. Their max was in 2021. They topped at 200 a share.
Look at the stock chart. They go below 30. Rough. They're going south. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's just that happened the past couple of weeks. And that was just crazy to watch, especially because I have good memories of working with Unity and working with students. So I had like an art show that we did with like a bunch of students made Unity games and animations, and it was fun. And I got away from it because of the complexity. But I always thought as a business, the business model they were promoting for indie developers and students, I thought was great. I actually thought they just wished that they made the actual editor, the engine, actually easier to learn for somebody new that especially if somebody didn't want to do too much programming. I was hoping that they would do that. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, there we go. We had a decent after show.
All right.
Guess we'll have to mix this audio and feed it to the AI and see what they have to say about us.
All right. And my computer seems like it lasted, so I think we should be good. The one thing I was wondering, was going to ask you this, but you use, and I think I ask you this a couple times a year. Do you still use that application that you could drag things off to your tablet and use your tablet as a third monitor or a second monitor?
Yes and no. You can't drag things. You just can move the cursor across.
Oh, because I can't like have a window. It can't be like a remote desktop. Or I can't like, because I was wondering, it
doesn't.
It would be nice when I'm doing the OBS or at least this browser window I'm seeing the stream on. I'm not looking at my laptop, but if I could have like an iPad up on a stand next to the camera and it just saw just the video feed, that's what I